This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, March 11, 2024. Enjoy. Caissance 1512, written by Comfortable Pie 7983. The day I thought I crashed, but didn't. About 4 years ago, I lived in the Bay Area and was in the awful morning traffic. That morning, I was in a big rush and had forfeited my coffee at home, with the intention of having it once I got to work. I'm sitting in this traffic when I go to mess with the radio. I'm totally distracted and rear-end a white truck in front of me. My heart drops, throw on my blinker and try to see how the dude I crashed into is reacting. Except he's not reacting at all. He doesn't look in his rearview mirror at me, doesn't signal, nothing. Traffic moves forward a tiny bit, and I'm sick to my stomach, trying to see the damage on his truck that I've caused. But there's no damage at all to his truck. Crazy, because I can vividly recall the crunch noise and the feeling of the impact, even to this day. I figured that my car got the brunt of the damage, and this guy probably doesn't have insurance and doesn't want to stop in this horrible traffic. I cheer myself on like, okay, I guess we're gonna have to get our car fixed. That sucks, but at least this day isn't ruined. As I'm getting closer to work, I keep hearing my brain say, that didn't happen, it wasn't real. I totally disregard this because the crunch of the car and the thud of the impact was so real. When I get to work, I jump out to assess the damage to my car. Nothing, not a scrape, nothing. With the noise it made, I imagine my entire front bumper was probably smushed in. I'll never forget the experience and feeling of this absolutely wild madness. Not schizophrenic, no drugs, was awake, just don't know how to explain what occurred. Case file number 1513, written by Anonymous. The Sixth Sense of Family. My dad's side of my family does this on sort of a regular basis. A couple years ago, my father insisted that my mom needed to talk to her brother, needed to do it now. He insisted that uncle wasn't well and needed to talk to her. Dad didn't even like my uncle, so after a few days of pestering, my mom had me call. Uncle picked up the phone, but he had literally just walked in the door, having just gotten out of the hospital where he had been exactly the same amount of time Dad had started insisting she needed to call. It was exactly 6 days, having had cancer surgery. My sister, Otto, is known for showing up exactly when she's needed. The oddest example was that for no reason anyone can figure out, she turned around halfway on her commute to work, went back home and arrived just as her husband collapsed from a stroke. He had been asleep when she left. She hadn't left anything at home. She just turned around and went home. She called the ambulance and he recovered, whereas if she hadn't come home, he'd likely have died. If that was one incident, we'd think it was just a little odd. But all of her life, she just randomly arrives just as someone needs her, and 90% of the time, she has no explanation as to why it happened other than a feeling she should stop by. Very odd, but she's learned to listen to whatever the heck is telling her, where she needs to be. This side of the family calls this sort of thing thinking on people. They consider it a fairly reliable form of communication, which just sounds really odd to other people, but is just taken as a given among the family. Case file number 1514, written by Vegan Court. My broken Lapis Lazuli defied logic. This absolutely has my mind blown. I'm a crystal collector. I also have a rock tumbler that I like to throw rough pieces in from time to time. I have a Lapis Lazuli worry stone that broke into 2 pieces a couple years ago. This past summer, I finally got a tumbler. I was excited to tumble the 2 broken pieces to smooth out the rough edges. I threw them in with some other stones of the same-ish hardness. For those that don't know, tumbling takes a lot of time and multiple rounds with different types of grit. So a week goes by, it's time to take them out clean and put them back in with the different grit. I was with my husband in the kitchen as I was assembling them back in the tub. I mentioned to him how I love this particular piece of smoothing, and excited for the end result. The rocks tumble. About a week later, I took them to do the process again. My husband helps me rinse them off in the backyard. We're done, come back in, and I start putting them back. That's when I noticed the larger piece of the lapis that broke was missing. No big deal. It probably fell outside while rinsing. I searched and searched the yard. At this point, I'm upset because I was really excited about this particular piece. I looked everywhere, even illogical places. Maybe it could have dissolved? No, the other small piece was still in the batch, no issues. Plus there would be blue grit everywhere. It was a whole ordeal for me, and I was ranting about it to my husband all night. Could never find it, so I moved on. Then this morning, it's my coworker's birthday, and she's been starting to take an interest in crystals. I have quite a bit of raw pieces, so I thought I'd go through my box and pick a couple for her. Then there it was, sitting on the top of all the other ones, totally untumbled. I'm completely baffled. I told my husband, and he's just as bewildered as me. We both know this happened and nothing logical can explain it. Side note, when it went missing, I said to my husband, "Watch, it will just appear out of nowhere one day." But having it also in the state it was before I started tumbling is a whole new level of weird. Case file number 1515, written by Glass Jailer. I breathed underwater twice without equipment. On 2 occasions I have breathed underwater with no mechanical assistance. I was about 11 when it first happened. I was swimming one afternoon in the diving well at my gym. The pool is about 14 feet deep, with a fairly small surface area. I've always been a strong and confident swimmer. I love to dive to the bottom of the pool and flip over, open my eyes, and look up at the surface. So I dive down, and sitting against the wall, I have the overwhelming urge to breathe in. I refuse this thought, disbelieving and scoffing at my brain's sheer strangeness. But the thought comes again, and it is utterly convincing. I can't explain why I decided to breathe in. I just know that I wouldn't ever choose to do that, but in this instance, I did. I took the most careful, mincing breath in. I could feel great pressure, but I breathed normally. It was air I breathed and not water. I took 4 full breaths while sitting at the bottom of the pool, and after each breath I became more horrified and agitated. My disbelief was outstanding. I kinda freaked and shot to the surface as quick as I could. After I rationalized a bit, I calmed down. My logical mind kept thinking that somehow I'd had a bubble of air caught in my face. For how else could I have breathed like that? But over the years of trying to make sense of it, 30 years old now, I recognize that air always finds its way to the surface expediently. It won't just catch around someone's face. I tried to do it again that day, diving, trying to replicate the experience. Got quite a bit of water up my nose before I gave up. It did happen a second time, same pool, 4 years later. I took 5 breaths. The same feeling of overwhelming confidence that it would be okay to breathe. Couldn't explain it for the second time either. Very strange. I don't know. No one has ever believed me, but I've only ever mentioned it to a select few. I still can't figure it out. Does anyone have any physics or logic thoughts on this? Has it happened to anyone else? Case file number 1516, written by Ned Nederlander. Aliens, government cover-ups, or coincidence? Some friends and I were driving home after hanging out at a cabin for the day. We were driving into LA, so traffic was kind of bad as usual. We had 2 cars full of people, but we didn't bother trying to stay together on the road. The other car in front of us called us at one point and asked if we had hit the traffic yet. Luckily we hadn't, so we got off the next exit and took side streets. An hour later, we got home and checked up on the other car. They said that nothing had moved, all the cars were turned off. People were walking around the freeway like some kind of zombie movie. So they were already kind of freaked out. The helicopters and hordes of cop cars didn't ease their tension either. Back at the house, we were looking online to try to figure out what happened, but couldn't find anything. So we started joking about there being aliens and the government was trying to cover it all up. Eventually, we found a report on SigAlert, an official Californian Highway Patrol website, that a silver Honda Accord had stalled in the carpool lane right where traffic had stopped. We took a screenshot of it and sent it to the other car. 5 minutes later, we got a call from the other car. "Did you see the report we sent you?" "Yeah, but did you just find that? 'Cause traffic barely started moving a minute ago." But right after I read the report, we were in the carpool lane and it suddenly stopped. I looked up at a silver Honda Accord, stopped right in front of us. Then the guy got out and popped the hood and is currently trying to figure out why his car stalled. Case file number 1517, written by Perry 1. Trapped in time paradox at school. This happened a week ago. It was a normal day in school. It was the last hour and we were writing an exam. My friend sitting next to me asked for an answer on the exam. The teacher overheard it and told us not to talk with each other. He asked me a question. The teacher walks up to us and tells us not to talk. The teacher goes back. The exact same thing repeats over and over. It felt like an eternity. At first I was confused as to what was happening, but after a while I started freaking out. The only words I could utter out were held and what is happening. My friend kept saying the same phrase over and over. Calm down now. I was just staring at him and he started repeating this endlessly. This freaked me out even more. I just stood up, grabbed my bag and left the class, leaving everyone behind. I don't know how I'm supposed to describe this part of what happened. I only have a dizzy memory of it, but from the part of picking up my bag all the way to leaving the schoolhouse, it felt like it was happening thousands of times. It all felt like it just kept repeating. As I was walking to the train station to drive back home, these weird loops started to fade off. When I was finally at home, they had already stopped. I don't have any explanation for what or how this happened. My best guess would be some kind of derealization. When I told my friend about what had happened, he didn't seem to remember most of it. He told me I just left the room for no apparent reason. Case file number 1518, written by a Minty Mint Oreo, the Sweaty Gym Enigma. This happened 1.5 years ago, and it still creeps me out to this day. I had once gone to the gym I always go to, and upon arrival, I put my bag in a locker. Took out my locker's keys out of my wallet and locked it. Then I put my keys in my phone case as I usually do. Fast forward to an hour, and I dropped my phone while working out. And since my keys were on my phone case, the phone case dislodged and the keys fell out. I picked them up and put them back in my phone case, no biggie. After I finish working out, I go to unlock my locker, and try as I might, I could not open the locker for the life of me. I was panicking thinking someone opened my locker and stole my bag, which had my wallet and some valuables. I went to the reception and this instructor, using a pair of pliers, forced the locker open, only to realize that it did not have my bag and it had someone else's. I was really confused until the instructor pointed at a locker above the one he just opened. That locker had the keys inside the padlock, covered with the box they came in. We then opened that locker and lo and behold, my bag was there. Needless to say, I was confused as hell. So was the instructor when I handed him my keys from my phone case, which apparently were not mine. But someone else had my keys too and switched my locker? It makes no sense considering each key is one of a kind. I have a feeling very few will believe this actually happened, but I swear in my life it's true. Case file number 1519, written by new performer 4402, from Waffle House mugs to mystery apples. A month or so ago, a Waffle House holiday mug appeared randomly. I had a lot of great suggestions on how I should perhaps make sure my house isn't being occupied, via attic or basement dwellers. While I found it highly unlikely, since I have cameras all around my house, I did a house sweep regardless. Nothing, nada, no uninvited guests. A couple days ago, I was thinking about my mother's potato pancakes and how she would always serve them with sour cream and applesauce. I had some non-fat Greek yogurt, which I felt could substitute nicely for the sour cream, but had no applesauce available. Okay, I thought, well, forget it. I guess I'm not having potato pancakes, because what heathen has potato pancakes without applesauce? Just now, I opened my vegetable drawer to grab an onion, and there they sat. 1 green apple, 1 red apple. I don't buy apples. Mangoes, bananas, pineapples, oranges, bring me the fruit. Apples, just no. So once again, I'm sending out a notice. If you are missing a green or red apple, let me know. Realistically, I'm not sending them back to you, because I think I'm gonna make applesauce, so I can have potato pancakes. Is it possible that the spirit world is sort of like Robin Hood, taking stuff you don't need and giving it to those who do? Case file number 1520, written by K8bit, Deja Vu or Dimensional Jump. Either I'm dealing with some sort of memory loss, or I'm dealing with a guy from an alternate timeline. I started college this week, and one of my classes is world religion. On my first day of class, a guy walks in about 15 minutes late and sits next to me. During break, he looks at me, smiles wide, and says, "It's been a long time, how are you?" I have zero recollection of who he is. He doesn't look or sound familiar. I tend to not forget people, even if they only played a very small role in my life. I asked him who he was and how he knew me. He told me his full name, still not ringing any bells, and said he knew me from a private school called Homeland Village, or something like that. He said that I was there to take a class on Photoshop. He also mentioned the names of some of the other students, and he wrapped up his story with how we were at a Halloween party together once. I have 1, never attended private school, or have even heard the name of the one he mentioned, and 2, never taken a Photoshop class, and 3, Never been to a Halloween party that had more than a good 6 close friends. I was convinced that he had confused me for someone else, but here's the kicker. He knows me by a name that I no longer go by. Described me with a very out there hairstyle that I haven't had in years. What the actual hell? Bonus file written by Anonymous. The Ghostly Hoodie. My university was bisected by a large lake with a wooden footbridge going across it, and it had a gazebo island in the middle. One night while walking up to the footbridge, I noticed a guy in a gray hoodie with the hood up, walking across the section of the bridge closest to me, towards land, but didn't think anything of him. At that moment, a big oak tree next to the sidewalk I was on cut off my view of the bridge for a split second. When I passed the tree and looked back towards the bridge, the guy in the hoodie was just gone. He couldn't have possibly walked by me off the bridge because I would have seen him, and he couldn't have possibly had time to turn around and make it all the way back to the center island. He was just plain gone into thin air. And this gets better. When my friend came back from abroad the next semester, something in conversation reminded me of what I saw. I started bringing it up and said I saw something weird on the bridge. His eyes lit up and he asked, "Dude in a hoodie disappeared?" He said he saw something like that freshman year, but never mentioned it because he thought his eyes were just playing tricks on him. I guess not. Case file number 1521, written by Mystery Dental Patient. My roommate's fury transcends space and time. I, 23 female, just got home, was laying in bed relaxing, scrolling through Instagram, and I heard my roommate, 27 male, outside my window, scream. A pure, guttural frick. I heard him punch his truck and say, "God fricking damn it." So I got out of bed to unlock the door because I'm guessing it was a crap day or something. But he wasn't outside. The neighbors were playing with their kids, quiet but somewhat busy street. So I text him, "Are you okay?" And 20 minutes later, I get a text. "I'm on my way home and I'm freaking pissed." Still a 30 to 40 minute drive. He hasn't left work. So when he got home, I asked if he came home and drove off. He said no. I asked if he lost his cool. He asked how I knew that. I said, "Was it around 5:50 p.m.? He said yes. It was around the time he texted me back, 20 minutes later. I asked if he had said those words and punched his truck. He said it was verbatim what he did and said. Not sure what this means. He was over 20 miles away towards the city. There is no way I could hear him during rush hour traffic, but I did. I'm kinda freaked out. Case file number 1522, written by Rich Dimension 9254. My sister was lost in time. This happened to me about 15 years ago, but to this day I cannot explain it. I changed the names to remain anonymous. When I was 15, my family moved into a rental house. There was always a weird energy about that house. I can't explain it, but something was always eerie about it. It was a beautiful old home, and an elderly widow had lived in it before us. She had been an opera singer and college professor in the arts. Her name was Mrs. Martin, and she became kind of a character in the house that we'd reference often, as her children rented us the home with literally all of her belongings still in it. They didn't even clean out the fridge. It was very strange. The house was basically left like the day she passed away. Oh, the attic was infested with bats. It contributed to the spooky factor that was always felt in the house. I never liked staying there by myself, even during the daytime. On the night of the incident, I was home with my best friend Mallory, also 15, her younger sister Olive, 13, and my little sister Emma, 11. Mallory and I were in the living room watching a movie, and Olive and Emma were hanging out in the den, which was a room off of the living room with a door, and they were watching TV. No parents were home at the time. At one point, my sister Emma decided to go upstairs and take a shower. The way the house was set up, there was only one staircase, and you had to walk through the living room to use it. So she came out of the den, walked through the living room, went up, showered, and was up there for maybe half an hour. When she was done, she walked down the stairs in a white towel, stopped on the 6th step, and went, "Hey guys," with a little wave to which we acknowledged her cheerfully. And then she kept walking down the stairs, through the living room by Mallory and I watching TV, and opened the door into the den, and closed it behind her. My mom had been folding clothes down in the den earlier, which is why she came downstairs to get dressed. Maybe 2 to 5 minutes later, Mallory and I are still in the living room, and Olive and, we assume Emma, are watching TV in the den, when we hear from over our shoulder, "Hey guys," in the same inflection and tone as before. And it's my sister, Emma, in a white towel, who had walked down the stairs, was stopped at the 6th step, and had her hand up for a small wave, and then went to keep walking down when Mallory and I both gasped and turned and looked into each other's faces with absolute horror. It happened so quickly, but we both bolted upright, ran to the den, burst open the door to a startled Olive. Emma was trailing close behind with a, "What's going on?" When I opened the door, I truly expected to see another version of my sister sitting there. But no, it was just Olive. Mallory and I immediately began questioning them. "Emma, didn't you just walk down here a couple minutes ago?" "Olive, are you sure Emma didn't come down into the den just a few minutes ago?" "Emma, did you go downstairs after the shower but then go back up somehow?" We knew there was no way she could have come back upstairs without walking by us in the living room. It made no sense. Both the girls were so confused and beginning to get scared. They truly had no idea what we were talking about. Emma swore she had only come down the stairs that one time, and Olive swore she had never walked into the den in a towel before we all came in together just then. Because our sisters were so young at the time, and we could tell they were getting spooked, we decided to just pretend we were kidding and left them to go back to the living room. I remember sitting in silence, and maybe even asking, "You saw that too, right?" And then we never spoke of it again. I honestly didn't even tell my parents or my sister what had happened until a couple years ago. My sister said she had no memory of it at all. I haven't spoken to Mallory since high school, so I have no idea if she remembers it. All I know is, if Mallory hadn't been there to witness it and have the same reaction I did in that moment, before either of us even spoke a word, I probably would have thought I was losing my mind. I'll never forget the look of horror and confusion she gave me. And I probably gave it right back to her when Emma came down the stairs that second time. To this day, it still creeps me out to think about. In the years since, I have read many stories about glitches in the Matrix, and seen some about time loops. People witnessing the same event happen twice or more in the same way, usually close together. I believe this is what I and Mallory experienced with my sister that day. We only lived in the house for a year before my parents purchased their own home and we moved. Last year, my sister went back to visit the town and said she drove by that house. Apparently, they had split it into 2 homes to rent it out to the college kids. We both agreed that the strange energy forces that existed in that home were probably not too happy to be split in 2. Case file number 1523, written by Mrs. Wonder Wonka, The Vanishing Streets in Puerto Rico. I'm currently in Puerto Rico at an Airbnb in a residential community. I'm here through a series of positive synchronicities. I'll mention I've been very much involved in various personal, spiritual, and let's say interdimensional ponderings and adventures for about 8 months. I'm in Tuquilo, a small little beach town. I got lost literally 2 blocks from my Airbnb. I thought I was on the same street. I'd only walked a half a block away and turned right around. I have to smoke off premises. It was daytime. I was on a different street, with all new houses and each had like 5 dogs barking at me. I remember things by landmarks. It was a different street. I broke out in a sweat. These dogs were all barking. I asked someone where to go. I was somehow 1 street over. I turned a corner and found it immediately. Fast forward to 10 minutes ago. I walked again to the same spot and the street isn't there. It's actually not there. I'm really panicking and no one will believe me. I didn't lose any time. I didn't black out. Things feel different, but I don't know if it's just because it was so jarring. Has anyone experienced this? Case file number 1524, written by The Riff, a 5th grade mystery. In 5th grade, there was some rally to give prizes to the kids who sold the most stuff door to door. We were all in the gym and it was over. Being closest to the door on the left side of the gym, we were the first class to line up and start leaving. I'm in the very back, and I see my friend Wesley towards the front of the line. He hits his shoulder really hard in the middle part that separates the double doors, so the line flies out, and then when I step outside, there's only my friend who was immediately in front of me and 3 girls. The 5 of us are entirely alone in the hallway. Our immediate thought is that they got ahead of us somehow, but that shouldn't really be possible because it's a long enough hallway. We went all the way back to class, but all the classes in fact, were empty. One girl says, Wasn't art next? Maybe they went all the way to the art room. And so we went further, turned left, only to see the art room was empty. Someone then says, well, where did they go? Let's go back to the gym. The girls start to go back the way we'd come, and my friend and I go the other way. It's a small school, and the hallways basically go around in a big square. The art room is exactly opposite the gym, so going either way is the same distance. We reach the gym, and so do the girls, having not seen anyone, and seeing that all those classrooms were empty as well. So we went back to the gym. The gym is mostly empty now. A few adults are cleaning up. One is carrying the big banner that was high up on the gym wall. The very last class is filling out the other doors, which lead into the same hallway. So I turn around and I'm at the back of the line. My whole class is right in front of me. At first I thought, wow, how did I miss that? I'm confused. But then I see my friend Wesley, far ahead of me, in the line as before, hit his shoulder really hard on the middle part between the double doors. And then I turn around again and see the adults before are just starting to clean up. And the big banner is still high up on the wall. I spoke with the other four. We all agreed that this happened, and we had no way of explaining it. One of the girls was normally an extreme skeptic, the annoying type that doesn't believe even the mundane things like, I live in the same state that Abraham Lincoln once did. Even she was completely baffled and willing to believe something weird was going on. I never told anyone outside of that group, and as far as I know, no one else did. But for the next several days, it was all my friends and I could talk about to each other. Creepy File, written by Lukacs Magnota. What really happened at the red light? I think I was abducted or something supernatural happened. I'm not ashamed. I don't know if I should report this or what. I just need some guidance. I'll try to keep it brief. Saturday night, my boyfriend and I were heading home after a drinkless night out. I was driving and pulled up to a red light and told him, keep an eye out for the green light for me, because I wanted to check my phone. Now I always pull up on the white line. I hate when people stop short of it. I was fully aware and not sleepy at all when I said this. For additional context, I was going down a slight hill. I was up the hill from the light, so I would have to roll backwards up the hill with my car and drive. I also have the auto parking brakes when my car comes to a complete stop. The next thing I know, I woke up, a car about 40 inches away from the line by the red light. Confused and a little panicked, I muttered something like, what the hell? And my boyfriend sat up and said, what the frick just happened? I snapped at him. I said, let me know when the light turns green, I don't know. He said, how long were we sitting here? I shrugged. He says, my video played for 10 minutes, and went back through the video, and didn't remember any of the video in the time that had passed. It creeped me out. I barely slept Saturday night, and Sunday joked about it to my sister. But today, on the way to work, my boyfriend and I passed the same traffic light. So I asked him, what do you think happened Saturday? Weird, huh? And he had no idea what I was talking about. I recounted the entire story as specifically as I could. He didn't even remember getting home or the ride home. So, do you think something supernatural happened? And if so, do I report it? To where? Caisson sur File 1512. The day I thought I crashed, but I didn't. I do think a version of you crashed, but it was more the perception of who crashed. It wasn't necessarily the you currently. I think quantum immortality isn't necessarily a great fit. There's variations to the theme, you could say. One way or another, I don't believe this was a dream, it wasn't a vision, I don't believe it was figment, a creation of your mind. I think it really did happen, in one universe or another. For whatever reason, you were consciously perceptive of it. Now it is possible it's just quantum immortality. Caisson sur File 1513. The Sixth Sense of Family. Oh, Oto, your sister, is a wizard, because they arrive precisely when they mean to. But no, in all seriousness, this is an uncommon ability that I think everyone has the potential to harness. It is more of a sense than an ability. The more tethered you are to someone, the more souls you're linked, or like quantum entangled. The more you can perceive what's happening to them, even if your mind can't always decode it into the conscious, you still get a gut feeling. And often that gut feeling is correct. So I always say, trust your gut. No, it's not always going to be correct. The senses we have can be fooled or can be misconstrued by our subconscious, but generally they're going to be correct or lead you in the correct path. so you might not know why your gut is telling you to go home during the day. But if it's very strong, listen to it. Questions file 1514. My broken Lapis Lazuli defied logic. Yeah, so DOP is very common, but this is an extra wrinkle. Maybe a wrinkle in time? The question is this from a different universe in a past version of that same universe, or it could just be yours? The thing is, time travel is very finicky when you're within the same universe. So it might just be you stole it from a different universe, a snapshot of their past. And if we go with that logic, then DOP where an object disappears or returns, or maybe you just get a duplicate. But if it can be from past timelines, things that have already happened, well, you're robbing from the past. Who cares then? It already happened. So that's not a big deal. If you can borrow stuff from the past in different timelines, okay. I'm not robbing from myself in the now in those other universes. That'd be cool. And now time for the quote of the day. It is not giving children more that spoils them. It is giving them more to avoid confrontation. John Gray. This one makes me think a bit. I do believe that if you give your children too much without any effort on their part, then yeah, they can become spoiled. They can become entitled. They feel they deserve it because it's how they've always lived. So it's always a question, if you're a rich family, rich parents, how do you raise your kids well so they still develop character? Because you still want to care for them, you want to give them the best life you can, but if you spoil them, then yeah, they're gonna grow up spoiled most of the time. Maybe not always, there's some exceptions, I'm sure. So how do you do it then? There's different ideas, like pretending you're poor or middle class, and then on their 18th birthday, you just give them a lump sum after they've already gone through the trials and tribulations of childhood and teenage years as a normal version of it. That's one way to do it. But personally, I think just strong sense of chores, and they can't get anything they want at any time, but you do give them a decent amount, but they have to work for it. So they do chores around the house, they help around, they get a good work ethic. That's probably the best of both worlds. Questions file 1515. I breathed underwater twice without equipment. So is this quantum immortality, and you're moving through different timelines every time you breathe in, you're dying? But I don't think it can be that, because you remember each breath. You remember that and not dying. In quantum immortality, you remember dying, the actual process of termination. So in this case, somehow, maybe you have a genetic mutation that enables you to breathe underwater in limited circumstances. I mean, that's kind of cool. I even prefer that. X-Men style. You are aquatic. No, what's the superhero that can talk to aquatic animals? Aquaman. DC, I think, yeah. Actually, DC and... Wait, X-Men are in Marvels or DC? I'm actually not sure. I like them, but I don't know that detail. Questions file 1516. Aliens, government cover-ups, or coincidence? Oh yes, so, when an official source, online or news or whatever, reports on an event or incident that didn't happen yet, they report it before it happened in real life. That'll give your mind something to work on. And there's a famous example of this that I can't utter on YouTube, but I'm sure those in the know what I'm talking about. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's weird. Because yeah, of course, there's a delay in news broadcasts, so they could report it way after it happens, but not before. There's no delay in real life, as far as we're aware. So how do they know? Questions file 1517. Trapped in the time paradox at school. I think this would make a great horror story, and just an experience in real life as it actually happened. It's like the dark side of Inner Light from TNG, which is a common reoccurrence in my own reading of stories all over the place, especially lately. The idea of being in a time loop, or living a separate life, for years and years and years. In this case, it's even worse, because you're not living a life, you're just stuck in a repeating pattern that you can't escape from, until eventually you're let out. I suppose it could be some sort of twisted space-time portal, where you're not taken anywhere in space, you're taken multiple times, reoccurring within time. And I guess if a space-time portal is there in one moment, and then you're sent to the past, and you cross it intersecting again and again and again, maybe it's not even intentional. It's just the fact that you're repeating the same way you did things before, Groundhog Day, because you keep entering the portal that you don't even know is there. So I guess if you're stuck in a repeating pattern that won't end, try to do something different. Maybe you won't cross into that portal again. And now time for the poem of the day. In a land where the laughter flows free, there lived a frog named Mr. B. He wore a top hat, oh so grand, but his dance moves were quite unplanned. He'd hop and skip upon the ground, tripping over, tumbling around. With each leap, he'd croak and squawk, making all the other critters talk. But Mr. B he didn't mind, for he was one of a unique kind. In a world of serious toads, he brought joy down the roads. So if ever you're feeling glum, remember Mr. B and hum, for life's too short to take too seriously. Just dance like him, oh so deliriously. A hop and a skip in your step. You ever did that when you were a teenager or even a child? You'd just be walking down the road and suddenly start to hop and skip around. It's like the burst of energy and happiness and joy. There's no reason you can't do that as an adult. Go for it. Case also file 1518. The Sweaty Gem Enigma. QI doesn't fit because only the soul travels. So if you're in a new universe, and you still have the normal keys and they don't fit, well, the keys shouldn't travel with you. You're just occupying the body of that universe. So it's not quantum immortality. Somehow, your entire reality, or a strong segment of it, was shifted. Now, maybe it was some sort of multiverse vision, and then when you go back the next day, the lockers are going to be back to normal, and of course you have the wrong keys then. But outside of that, I'm stumped. Case also file 1519. From Waffle House mugs to mystery apples. Yeah, I do confess that the spiritual Robin Hood is a funny idea. This Robin Hood dies, becomes the fighter for justice and equity, and goes around robbing from the rich or the government or, nefarious actors. Maybe not just any random rich person, but those that committed fraud or other various illicit, compromised activities to obtain their wealth. Sure, okay. Maybe if you redistribute just that wealth, I can get behind that. Now, if this wasn't a will that was external to you, like a guardian angel or a spirit as you suggest, then I would say it has to be somehow your own will manifested to pull objects from other universes over when you need them. Because this can't be a coincidence. You just don't have apples and then you do? No, there's no way that's random. Any object could be moved over, so why an apple? It has to be through your own will, connected to other universes. I'm not sure which one I like more, the idea that we can manifest our own objects from, theft from other universes, or some other entity watching out for us. Both are rather comforting, aren't they? Case also file 1520. Deja vu or dimensional jump. Yeah, this is an interesting case of quantum immortality from the other perspective. So it didn't happen to you, it happened to this random person that started to talk to you. They're from a different universe, their soul is, and now they're inhabiting this person. He's always been in this universe, but his memories are now different because he's a different person. Memories define a large part of who we are, and yeah, they're different or fused together. So what he remembers really happened to him in a different place, far, far away. Case notes for the bonus file, the ghostly hoodie. Sure, it's like a delayed, ethereal quack standard. And now time for the question of the day. Do you have an inner monologue talking to yourself? And if you do, because apparently some people don't, which is just mind-blowing as much as any story I've ever read, some people can't talk to themselves, and some people have asphantasia, I believe it's called, where they can't picture things in their mind. Wow, that'd be crazy. Or is it aphantasia? Yeah, I think it's aphantasia. Anyways, they can't picture things in their mind. Imagine that you have aphantasia and no inner monologue. So you can't talk to yourself and you can't picture things. That would be depressing. I guess you never know what it's like to have those abilities, but damn. So yeah, to answer the question, I definitely do have an inner monologue, and normally I address myself as we. Part of me is separate, talking to itself. Isn't that weird? I think most people talk to themselves as we. But am I right? What about you? Case also file 1521. My roommate's fury transcends space and time. So it appears that mental connections on the soul plane level, they defy distance, or disregard distance, rather. So 20 miles, 20,000, quadrillions of miles separated by light years, it doesn't appear to matter. It is exactly the same as quantum entanglement in principle. And quantum entanglement is so bizarre because you can entangle two particles, and if you affect one, the other one will be affected, no matter the distance. It could be light years and light years, which 1 light year is 6 trillion miles. Regardless of the distance, it could be infinite. Something causes one particle to affect the other instantaneously. And we don't know how. Now, you can't transmit information this way. So that is different because these mental soul connections do transfer information. But the process underlining it might match with whatever affects quantum entanglement to be able to affect the other particle. You can't transmit information via the quantum entanglement because you can't agree upon where the particles are in their initial state. To observe the entangled particles would collapse their waveform and then separate the entanglement. So you can't know what spin orientation one is in and the other without looking and then destroying the entanglement. That's the problem. If you could observe without affecting the particles, then you could transmit information, but as far as we know, you can't do that. Question to file 1522. My sister was lost in time. So a time loop maybe, but space-time portals tend to linger behind in the same area, so traveling through one doesn't collapse it. Usually, or not usually, they can be unstable, but then there's a visual aura about them when they are, at least in the few times we've seen them collapse. Heard them collapse in stories. And this only happened once, so if it was a loop, it would continue to happen again and again and again, or even if it's just in space, you zip back up, you would have noticed that. So I don't think it can be a space-time portal. Probably multiverse quacksite, which is just to say, you saw your sister in a different universe, and of course for her, nothing was different. She never did that in this universe. There's just so many different copies of us running around doing different things, slightly different in different universes. If we can see them all, we can literally see our loved ones do absolutely anything. Which is very interesting to think about. What do you want to see your loved one do? Maybe you'd always hope that they'd take up dancing or something, and one universe they have, and maybe they're amazing at it. Now time for the quote of the day. Forgive your enemies, but never forget their names. John F. Kennedy. Yeah, I mean, this is just a variation on forgive, but don't forget. And it makes sense, because yeah, you can forgive someone who's demonstrated that they're trying to change their ways and they're not going to repeat it. One time, maybe two, but I think just giving a person a second chance, but not a third, multiple times after that. Not really that kind of person. You get one extra chance with me. But anyways, the idea is that, yeah, you can forgive someone, but you still need to remember what they did, because at any point, they could relapse in their ways, you could say. Not necessarily drug-related, but you get my gist. Always be mindful of what they did, but don't bring it up to them. It's not malicious ammunition. It's just there to keep you grounded. So maybe don't trust them 100%. Maybe bump it up to 99%, depending on what they did, of course. If they did something extremely small and minor, then it's not a big deal. That'll be up to your judgment. Case also file 1523. The Vanishing Streets in Puerto Rico. You know, I'm not even sure if that's the correct way to say Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. It's just fun to say. And I always find it funny when people don't know that Puerto Rico is technically a US territory, so people who live there are US citizens, although they can't vote if they live there, which is a whole weird thing about it. Anyways, I think the splitting of realities between multiple universes must be so disorienting, especially when changes are so massive like this one. So you somehow walked out into the street and it wasn't your street. So maybe a space-time portal connected with a multiverse event, because the road wasn't there in recheck. So it couldn't have just been your universe. Case also file 1524, a 5th grade mystery. Yeah, while I do hold space-time portals as very common occurrences and responsible for a lot of glitches, I think in this case, it's probably the dead pocket theory. So when you die, you transition to a different universe. In this quantum flux realm, there can be servers created, or maybe they're always there and just waiting for people to join, but basically, they exist in a state where there are no other humans or almost no other humans. Maybe there's another person in Nepal on a mountain that's just waiting his transition to a new universe, but basically, there's very, very few people. And if you think about it, there's about, I think, 2 people that die every second, or is it just 1? Maybe 1 person dies every second, something along those lines. On the scale of the globe, people are dying often, but it's not that fast, that many, if you consider the scale of the planet. So if, say you're there, you're in this dead pocket server for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, what is that? You know, you get maybe 600 people that are in the entire globe at that given moment, because eventually they're transitioned out to their new universe, their new destination. So if this is true, at any given moment, maybe at just one in this dead server simulation, holding area, buffer area, there could only be 600 other people in the entire planet. So the odds of ever running into someone else in that zone is virtually impossible, unless you all died together. There are things that can happen with schools. There could be gas leaks, explosions, things happen that are just so sad when it involves kids, especially. And of course, we are reading this from the perspective of this new universe. So we wouldn't see it in the news or anything that something happened to a bunch of kids. We would have no idea because it happened in a different universe. That news story is headlines probably nationwide over there, maybe worldwide. But for you, you just never know. Case notes for the creepy file. What really happened at the red light? So your boyfriend initially remembered. Why did he forget? Did you somehow transition universes again after that? Probably not. Maybe your boyfriend was just too scared to even admit it to himself. Trauma can lead to a blockage of a memory. So maybe it's just trauma. And he subconsciously blocked the memory out after going to bed. That happens all the time when something affects you that disturbs you greatly. It doesn't have to just be pain. People think of PTSD and that kind of trauma, or being assaulted or something. Yeah, those can definitely trigger a memory block. But it doesn't have to be that. It could just be something that affects you emotionally, even though nothing physically happened to you. So maybe that's the explanation for this one. Now, time for the quote of the day. Is there life before death? Graffito. Yeah, I've wondered this so often because think about it. Before you were born, you didn't exist, and now here you are. So, I mean, you just think about it again. If you die, you return to that same state of non-existence. If there's no other universes, you're capped out on that. There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no simulation. It's just this. Well, you didn't exist before, and here you are. So it really is a logical way to reach reincarnation. Now, probably you don't retain your memories from past lives, if this is the case, but it's sort of like the universe recycling its material into different configurations. But the consciousness that is self-aware, maybe you die, and instantly you're reborn in a different form. That's kind of a cool idea, but it does make you a bit concerned that you can come back as, say, an insect or something. I hope not. I would hope to come back as a human being. Or what if you come back as an alien in a far distant world? That could be interesting. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.